This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Well, you built an online course, people aren't buying it, or they're buying it and they're not finishing it, or they're finishing it and they're not getting results, and you're not making money, and you're all sad. I've got the go-to guru expert to help you, the amazing Wes Kao. Welcome to The Speaking Show.
Thanks so much, David.
So Wes, give us a little bit of the backstory. Give us the Wes story, not West Side Story, but the Wes story of how you came to the fantastic work that you're doing today. And then we'll talk about Maven and what Maven is and sort of all the cool people that you've helped, Godin and Galloway. And do they all start with a G or just those two guys?
Just those two.
Okay. But please give us the backstory of how you came to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, for sure. My online learning journey really started in 2014 when I went to work with Seth Godin. So I was living in SF at the time, packed up my bags into 6 suitcases, moved across the country, sight unseen, to a little town in New York where Seth's office was. And initially, my role started as a 6-month special projects lead. And the reason was Seth had just sold his last company and he was looking for what to dive into next. So we explored a bunch of different ideas ranging from an artisanal bean-to-bar chocolate company to a nonprofit that would promote ideas that usually fell into the tragedy of commons, to mobile games. And where we eventually ended up landing was courses, online education, content. A lot of the transformations that he's helped his audience have was via events, via his teachings, via books. But one of the challenges that we realized was that people aren't reading books at the same rate that they used to. So how do we update his content to really resonate and be an interactive, engaging experience that fit where trends were going? So one of my first projects was building a Udemy course for Seth. So in the course of putting this together, I realized that completion rates were really low. A bunch of people were signing up, enthusiastic and optimistic about change and self-improvement, but only 7 to 10% of people were actually finishing these courses. A recent MIT study even showed that it was actually closer to 3 to 6%. So really abysmal completion rates. And Seth and I looked at this and thought, there's got to be a better way. Like, this can't be the end all be all of what online education was supposed to be, for our society. So we thought, well, what if we did literally the opposite of what massive open online courses do? So courses like Udemy, Skillshare, LinkedIn Learning, they're basically a series of pre-recorded, self-guided, evergreen videos. And you do them solo, you do it without any community, it's self-paced. So, technically you have all the freedom in the world, but a lot of that means usually that you have no accountability either.
That's what I was going to say, is including the freedom not to do the program.
Exactly. I personally have a couple Udemy or Skillshare courses that I bought 6-7 years ago, one on hand lettering, calligraphy, I think one on classical music, where I took 15 minutes of one lecture and it's been gathering digital dust since then. So I think that's a pretty common story for a lot of learners online. So we decided to flip the script and we said, well, instead of it being solo, what if you did it with a community of learners? And instead of it being, $10 to $20, $50 per course, what if we created a course where it was expensive enough that students felt like they had skin in the game and felt like they were compelled to finish? And what if instead of it being passive content consumption, it was all about active learning, hands-on doing, and giving each other feedback? So we put this all together in the form of a 1-month course called the altMBA. And initially I was skeptical. I just thought, at the time, Slack, Zoom, these were still kind of new technologies. And the idea of strangers getting together and feeling the kind of transformation that you feel when you're in the same room, breathing the same air together, I just didn't really know if that was going to work. But from the first day of the altMBA, where the students got together, started chattering amongst themselves, started creating their own channels, started meeting offline, started becoming fast friends, it was really obvious that we had stumbled upon a format that really worked. So I stayed at the altMBA for 3 years, built up the program into thousands of alumni from 45 countries, 500 cities, built out the team to over 60 people, including a bunch of coaches, community managers, head coaches. And then after that, I had another nagging question, which was there something special about what was in the water at the time during the altMBA? Or was this something that you could replicate? And so at that point, I started working directly with other creators and other experts, including Professor Scott Galloway, William Ury and his team. He's a professor emeritus at Harvard who worked with President Carter on negotiations. He wrote Getting Past No and Getting to Yes. I worked with the co-founders of Morning Brew, Alex and Austin. I worked with David Perel, Tiago Forte, Rite of Passage, Build a Second Brain, some of the early popular cohort-based courses, and proved out that yes, there was something about this format that really engaged learners and allowed experts to charge about 100 times more than they could charge for a MOOC. So whereas I had mentioned a MOOC is usually $20 to $50, courses that are cohort-based are anywhere between $500 to $5,000. The altMBA, for example, is $4,500 USD. So really amazing revenue stream for experts. Now what I'm working on with Maven is democratizing that and allowing anyone to be able to teach. Back when I was consulting, working directly with creators, I was still mainly working with people with pretty big audiences who were, quote unquote, successful by, society standards, who had teams, who had budget. And the entire process for creating a course still took so much manpower and so much slog to really stitch together all these different tools, all the logistics, all the admin. So what I'm working on now with Maven is using software and technology to remove all that so that creators and experts, consultants, speakers can really focus on what they do best, which is connecting with their audience.
So I'm channeling these consultants and speakers and experts who are listening to us, Wes, and they're like, but Wes, I just put all this time and energy into creating my beautiful videos. And I'm a big believer in passive revenue. And of course, there's no such thing as passive revenue. It's always actively marketed, maybe passively delivered. But what you're saying is, you know what? It needs to be actively marketed and actively delivered. So I'm imagining for folks where this concept is new, this cohort-based course, how much time, because all of these very busy, very successful people that you mentioned, they're jetting all around, or maybe not during COVID, but they're still doing virtual speaking engagements. They're teaching their classes. They're running their companies. They don't have oodles of time to be, okay, on Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to get together at 2:00 Eastern. How much of this is scalable? And I know it is scalable because you've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people go through for each of your clients. But what part is in a portal? What part is in a community? What part is this kind of cohort, team coaching, peer coaching? Break down some of the building blocks and ingredients, and maybe how Maven accommodates some of those building blocks and ingredients that are really the best practices.
80% of creating a cohort-based course is upfront effort. So putting together the content, organizing your material in the same way that a lot of speakers, a lot of consultants have video-driven courses now. It's the same, right? So you put a lot of effort into creating this great course up front. So creating cohort-based course is very similar. You want to make sure that you design the course in a way that is built in a robust way from the beginning, that it's modular, that it takes into account student interactions, coaches potentially. But once you build this asset, you can, quote unquote, turn on your course whenever you want to. So that 20% of effort is in maintaining your course, making iterations, making any updates based on what students are reacting to. So in terms of scaling, I think one great example of scaling is Pomp, Anthony Pompliano. He's a crypto expert. He has 1 million followers on Twitter. And Pomp launched his course January 26th this year. It's now been about 8 months. He's already run 6 cohorts, several of which have made over $100,000 over a 2 to 3 week period. And Pomp himself only shows up twice a week to lecture for an hour or an hour and a half when the course is on. So yes, you as a creator still have to show up in certain times. Some creators, David Perel, for example, makes well over $1 million per year. as a 20-something-year-old teaching writing online, no formal background, no formal writing experience. Has a super popular course called Rite of Passage. It's amazing. And he teaches twice a year. So you can run your course as often or as little as you want. And, you do still have to show up, but this is the trade-off between, needing to sell a huge volume of courses, thousands and thousands of seats in a course where you're making $20 per course versus if you're selling a course for $2,000, you don't need that many students. And a lot of coaches, consultants find that showing up over, a 2-week period, once or twice a week is totally worth their time.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, so you said lecture. We show up a couple times a week and do lecture. I'm guessing a lot of the content, a lot of the teaching happens in the video assets. When the guru shows up, isn't it almost kind of like flip the classroom, or aren't they hungry for flip the classroom? It's like, hey, you watched videos for modules 2 and 3. Now here comes the guru, Q&A, action planning, asking questions, accountability, overcoming obstacles. Hey, but I'm stuck on this, solving problems, answering questions. Is it really a lecture, or is it more of kind of a, hot seats or some other kind of active learning?
Yep, exactly. When I say lecture, it really is very little of the traditional one-directional sage on stage type of lecture that we're used to. College professor in the front of the room, everyone else sitting silently. When I say lecture, I mean that's when you're there in a live workshop. So it should be 25% information transfer, 75% interactive. So anything that you can do in an asynchronous way, you should. So whether that's pre-recorded videos or a Loom video of you walking through something, or readings, articles, materials, a podcast episode that someone can listen to, anything that's asynchronous, you do asynchronously. So you're able to save the live time for stuff that you can only do when you have a group of people live with the coach, the speaker, the consultant, they're live. So a lot of that looks like discussion. It looks like breakout rooms in Zoom. It looks like debate. It looks like critique. So for example, Sean Puri, one of our instructors, has a power writing course, and he will ask his students to write 10 headlines for an article. So I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes, go. All right, after 2 minutes, we all share out what were some of the 10 headlines that we came up with. And he'll start critiquing live. All right, here's what I would do here. I would trim this. I'd move that around. I'd scrap this. That's not spiky enough. I'd focus on this. So it's much more about the back and forth that challenges students' ideas and also makes the speaker and the consultant, the teacher's ideas better. We hear from a lot of instructors that they learn just as much from teaching because their students come up with examples and use cases that they wouldn't have thought of on their own. And it actually spurs even more ideas. Li Jin actually mentioned this just recently. So she coined the term passion economy. She was a venture capitalist at Andreessen Horowitz, now runs her own firm. And she has a course teaching VCs and founders about the creator economy. So if you have a company that's in the creator economy or you want to invest in the creator economy, and she said that because she was thinking about her material so much during the course and interacting with students and seeing everything that they were coming up with and sharing with her, that it actually led to several breakthroughs and other articles and frameworks that she was able to come up with that she felt like if she hadn't had that, it would have taken much longer for her to generate those ideas.
Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. I want to address two things. One is you kind of dropped in very casually your term spiky content. I want to come back to that because I think that's a whole cool little segment that people would love to hear. Going back to the cohort-based courses, and again, just channeling our listeners, they're going to say, well, Wes, I'm the guru. I'm the teacher. If I start cutting loose on these cohorts, they start meeting outside of my purview. They start coaching each other. Am I not at risk of the blind leading the blind? And they're critiquing each other, not under my visibility, and now they're pulling each other further off the track because, they're not me?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the blind leading the blind is definitely a real issue. So we don't want to necessarily just let everyone loose without oversight. This is where coaches can come in. So you as a speaker, as a consultant, as a guru, you want your time to be highly leveraged. So everyone depending on you as a sole source of inspiration, as a sole source of feedback is not sustainable. So as your course scales, hiring coaches who can then help guide students becomes a really great way to scale your influence. So for example, I mentioned Pomp. Pomp recently promoted one of his coaches to become a head coach to then manage the other coaches. So if you're a first-time cohort-based course creator, you might want to start small. You might want to start with 15 students, 20 students, see how it goes, and have a tight feedback loop so you can iterate based on what students actually want to learn from you. But once you nail down your content, or if you are experienced at leading workshops, you have your exact go-to frameworks because you've been coaching for a while, you've been consulting for a while, you can go straight to having a production that's a little bit more serious from the beginning. So Pomp, for example, went straight to hiring coaches and a course manager within a month. He's a pro. So with coaches, hiring coaches based on a certain ratio that you want for your students. At altMBA, it was one coach for every 10 students. At Section 4, Professor Galloway's course, the strategy sprints, brand sprints, they're 2-week sprints. There's a coach ratio of 1 to 100. So it really depends on what you, the creator, believes is right for your course. And you want to set those expectations by training your coaches to say, hey, I want you to give feedback on these students' projects, or I want you to keep an eye on different channels. Make sure that what students are saying is still in line with my philosophies, with my teachings, and they're not going too far off the wrong path for too long before one of us, someone on the staff, jumps in and says, hey, actually, here's the way that we think about it, and then course correcting.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. Tell us about spiky content or a spiky point of view, and give us a little bit of the Wes rant on getting spiky.
If you're a consultant, if you're a coach, if you're an operator of any sort, there are basically thousands of other people with similar backgrounds, similar work experience, similar offerings, who could do a decently similar job to you. So this is why it's so important to have a spiky point of view so that you can stand out among the crowd and really show your value from the beginning. So what is a spiky point of view? A spiky point of view is a belief that you have about your realm of expertise that can be debated, but is rooted in rationale. So what I mean by that is this should be something that you have conviction about, that you believe in based on your track record and actual hands-on experience, but that another expert might disagree with. So another marketing expert, another personal development expert, another podcaster, they might say, you know what, David, I hear you, I see your point, but I disagree. I think the opposite. And that's great. 10 different marketers can have 10 different spiky points of view. And your spiky point of view should teach your audience something they don't already know. So for example, if you're a sales consultant and you say, sales is about relationships, this is not spiky. This is the opposite of spiky. Everyone says sales is based on relationships. So if you say that to your audience or a prospective customer or a client, they're not going to think that you're bringing anything particularly interesting or unique or thought-provoking to the table. But if you say something like, sales is not about relationships, that is a mistake that most people make. Sales is actually about blank, right? It's about whatever it might be, whatever you believe it's about. Then your audience's ears perk up because you're challenging a preconceived notion that they have. You're bringing something new. You're teaching them something new. So I think the spiking point of view is one of the best ways to think about how can I differentiate myself from all the other coaches, all the other consultants out there, and really hone in on what are some frameworks that you can teach to your clients and to your customers. If you believe so strongly in your spiky point of view, there's a good chance that that's something that's worth teaching. And you can really delve into the how when you teach a course, right? So you drop your knowledge bomb that, sales isn't about relationships, it's about blank. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. This new path that I recommend, here's how you do it. Here's how it works. Here's when to do it. So you can unpack a lot of that how, but you need to have a spiky point of view to really stand out and share your idea in a digestible way.
I could not agree more. One of the things, and this is about being contrarian and, really having a voice, having a lens, having a perspective, having
but not contrarian for the sake of it. That's one quick thing to point out. So I love that you bring up the contrarian piece. You don't want to just stir the pot just for the sake of it. So some people,
come on, please. Can I stir the pot just for the sake of it?
Some people will, if it's your style, then yes, that's your spiky point of view, is that I will stir the pot by being contrarian. So that's totally okay. But if you want to think of a spiky point of view, you want to avoid it being contrarian just for the sake of it.
Sure.
So, not just like saying something to get people riled up. You want it to be something that you genuinely believe in.
I love that. So it needs to have substance. It's not just upsetting the apple cart and moving on. But like you said, hey, if someone engages you in a debate about that you would have an intelligent, rational, maybe intriguing or interesting or unique point of view that you could back that up with actual substance. Exactly. I love that. Man, we have so much to talk about. This is so exciting. This is so great. I want to talk about culture in a cohort-based course. Obviously, community is a key piece, which you've mentioned, and we can dig a little bit more into that. But each of these creators, and even when we sign up for Maven, which we will, and I want to talk more about that, there's the software, there's the best practices. What's the magic of building a culture like you have done over and over and over again with all the great work that you've done? What's the key to building a culture of action, a culture of accountability, a culture of collaboration within these cohort-based courses?
I love that you bring up culture. There's really only so much that software can do if the culture, the content, the posture of the students isn't where you want it to be. So setting expectations with students from the beginning is crucial. Right from the first point of contact, from an ad, an email, a landing page, you want to set expectations with your students. And one way to do that is to make sure they understand that they're going to get out of the course what they put into the course. If you sit back with your feet kicked up, hands, arms crossed, waiting to be entertained, you're not going to get a lot from the course. And there's no amount of coaching, cajoling, and engagement that a coach or an instructor or your fellow students can draw out of you. So you should only do a cohort-based course as a student if you're ready to commit, if you're ready to get a lot out of it, if you're ready to do that hands-on work. So setting those expectations directly on your landing page, making sure that you're clear on who is it for, who is it not for, is one great way to set that culture. The other way, once students are in the course, is to celebrate the behavior that you want to see. So if you want your students to engage with each other and jump in to help answer questions, to take an active posture instead of just, asking a coach, hey, how do I do this? To try figuring it out and then sharing with the other students how you figured it out. Then when you see a student doing that, you as an instructor, as the consultant, the speaker, want to jump in and celebrate that. Say, Josh, great job for doing that. Jane, that was amazing. This is exactly what this course is about. We love when students support each other in this way. There's a bunch of experts within this community. So, this is exactly what we're here for, is to share our perspectives. So celebrating that spirit of generosity is something that we did a ton at the altMBA. We did a ton of in Professor Galloway's sprints, and it really encourages students to get the subtle and not so subtle message that, all right, this is what this community is about here. This is what things are like around here. If you think about culture, it's really saying, all right, what are things like? So that's both those written community guidelines, sure, that matters, but it's also what's celebrated. So you want to make sure that those two things are really tightly aligned.
And I'm also guessing, Wes, that part of this is in your marketing and in your outreach. And like you say, on the landing page or the sales page, the culture really starts with the kind of person that you're trying to attract, the kind of person that you're marketing to, the kind of person that would resonate with, here's how this works, here's what it is, here's what you get, here's what you need to bring, right? It's application-based. We don't take everybody. It's an application invitation-based marketing process. I think that's a huge part of it, is that people need to qualify. And that's not just some kind of marketing gimmick. I mean, you really want to make sure that they're the right people in your course, because as the cohort-based course creator and as the guru of this, the culture is deeply impacted by the kinds of people you attract. I'm imagining even one or two bad apples would make the whole thing go kerflooey.
Yes, I love that you bring up applications. So there's a spectrum of applications. On the one hand, you have rigorous applications like the altMBA, where we ask you to answer a few short answer questions, short essays to describe why you're interested in the altMBA, what you want to work on, why this has attracted you, what change you want to make in your life. So that's a more strict application because the entire benefit of the program is learning from fellow students. Seth Godin himself never shows up in the course. So it really is about learning from the curated group that we have put together. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, Professor Galloway's course, for example, don't have an application. So those are, you click a button and you're able to sign up. And the culture is equally amazing. So how does that work? It's what we talked about with setting the expectations up front on who is this for. It's being clear on what's taught here, what's not, so that when students come in, they aren't surprised that, I've seen some of this before, or, this is completely new. I didn't expect it to be new. Whatever someone might complain about, we set expectations really clearly up front. The other aspect that acts as a gating mechanism, as a filter, is the price point. So if you're a troll, if you want to spend $10 to be a troll, fine, that's maybe worth it for a little bit of fun. But if you're about to spend $900, $1,500, $2,500 to be a troll, most trolls are not that committed. So the higher price point filters out a lot of would-be trolls. And then in the middle of that spectrum for applications, you have somewhere, in between where you have a lighter application of some sort, where, maybe you as an instructor ask a couple questions to your audience, like, what's your profession? How much experience do you have with this topic? What stage of a company are you? Right? So that, if you're a sales consultant, you can filter for people who are making over $1 million in revenue, for example, or you can filter only for founders. So you can ask a couple questions that aren't meant to reject someone, but mainly meant to understand where you're coming from. I want to make sure that you're a good fit for this program. If you're not, we'll park your information. I might launch something new in the future that's a better fit for you. I would say that most speakers, most consultants have multiple courses in them. So don't try to fit everything in one course. You have probably a couple different personas in your audience. So you can always create a different course to satisfy, a different segment. But yeah, having that application, either rigorous, no application at all, or something light in the middle, thinking about where you want to be on that. There's a couple of different ways to choose.
Whoa, what a great interview. Are you taking notes? Remember to visit thespeakingshow.com for complete show notes, links, downloads, and resources related to this episode. See you over there. Now, take us behind the scenes of Maven, because this platform makes much of what we just talked about a whole heck of a lot easier. Yes, you still have to have great content. Yes, you still have to have the right people. Yes, you still have to show up and build that awesome culture. But talk about what Maven is and talk about what Maven does.
Maven is a platform that makes it really easy for anyone to create, build, host, and launch their cohort-based course. So right now, if you wanted to build a cohort-based course, you would have to cobble together a bunch of different tools to be able to make it work. So usually these tools look like Slack, Zoom, Teachable, Kajabi, Podia, Mighty, Heartbeat Chat, Circle, using email to stitch it all together and remind people, hey, on Thursday, 12 noon, we have that session. And meanwhile, your students are emailing you saying, David, who's my coach? David, who's my small group pod that I'm assigned to this week that I'm supposed to meet with? How do I find this link to the recording, right? So everything is really spread out all over the place, which is a lot of mental load and effort for especially solo consultants, solo coaches to be able to manage. So Maven creates an all-in-one place for you to have a single platform to manage everything that you need about a course. So both the live pieces and asynchronous pre-recorded pieces. And we cover everything from the application flow to the landing pages to payment processing to offering you a student portal that you can give to your students. So your students are able to log into a custom portal that you have and be able to see the schedule for your course, be able to see all the assignments, be able to see dripped content that you might be dripping on a weekly basis or on a, Monday, Wednesday, Friday cadence. They'll be able to see who the other students are with a student directory and be able to click through and see, oh, great, this person I want to meet, this person I want to reach out to. They'll be able to see a calendar of what's coming up, what's mandatory versus, optional social events that you might want to do. So it's a really robust platform that removes a lot of the slog pieces, the logistics, the admin, a lot of the technical pieces. I personally, when, from creating all the courses before starting Maven, I hated doing the technical pieces. It was the worst. And, I kind of watched videos on YouTube about how do I use Zapier to connect this thing to this thing. And then inevitably the Zap would break and I'd have to, figure out how to fix it. So all that annoying technical stuff, we take that off your plate. So you get to focus on your content, your students, building your community.
Now, one of the cool things that you mentioned just when you have a really well-designed cohort-based course is incredibly high completion rate, like 90% plus, plus, plus. During the length of the program, inside of Maven, or just whatever best practice you recommend, what are the accountability mechanisms, kind of that positive peer pressure, that positive friction that's like, oh man, I'm already, I missed last week's homework and I'm not doing this week's assignment and I need to go back and, revisit week 2 and I got to finish week 3. What accountability tracking do we see? And then as the speaker, as the consultant, as the content creator, how do I see who's on track, who's behind, who's way behind, and what kind of come along mechanisms do you recommend? And how much of that is kind of built into Maven, and just kind of what is the best practice when people fall off the wagon?
Accountability is one of the most important pieces of a cohort-based course. It's the reason why students are drawn to it in the first place. If they didn't want accountability, they would do a Udemy or Skillshare course. So that accountability shows up in a couple of different ways. Upfront, in the filtering process of the kinds of students that you even let into the course, there's already some accountability there because, again, you're filtering for students who are willing and able to commit a couple $1,000 or several $100s to a course. So right from the beginning, there's already a filter for, is this person likely to take this seriously? So that's a pretty important filter that takes care of, I would say, it kicks out the majority of tire kickers who would have just, cruised by. So once someone has made that investment and they're in the course, how do you make sure that they're getting the most out of it and staying up to date with all the material that you're teaching? Checking in on students on whether they're submitting those materials, how they're engaging during your live workshops. You want to keep a pulse on student engagement. So we recommend having surveys after every live workshop and definitely at the end of your course. Especially if you're a first-time course creator, doing this is a great way to get a lot of data about what your students are engaging with, how many people are, actively learning from the material versus feeling, hey, this actually wasn't that useful. Once you've run a couple cohorts, you might not have to survey as often, but in the beginning, after every live workshop, you just lecture for an hour and a half, send out a survey at the end. Ask people, hey, what did you think of this? And they'll tell you this part dragged on for too long. I mean, they're very honest. So they'll tell you, I wish this exercise could have been longer. Our team had just gotten started, in our breakout, really diving in, and then things got cut short. Or, you explained this one topic, you mentioned it in the pre-reading, but, I didn't get to read it. And so I was kind of confused when you dove into it. So you get a lot of information about, are people actually engaging the way that you plan for them to engage? We, at Maven, I teach a 3-week course on how to build a cohort-based course. It's free for all Maven instructors. It's the way that we onboard you onto our platform. And we have a cohort coming up at the end of September. So September 27th through mid-October. And with this cohort, it's the 4th time that I'm running it. And I've iterated it a ton in between sessions, all based on what instructors were telling us. So within the Maven software, this is a feature that we're going to roll out, in terms of tracking students and how can software help with that. Having a dashboard where you can imagine a row with students' names and then, columns where it shows assignment 1, workshop 1, assignment 2, workshop 2. So you can see, did the person show up, right? If they did, you have a little bubble filled in. Did they submit their assignment? Yes, no, bubble filled in. right? And so right now we do that manually. We recommend instructors to do it manually. We give you a spreadsheet. So it's actually not that bad because we design that spreadsheet for you so you can use it and just easily check a few boxes. But in the future, it's going to be even easier to see, who's fallen off the wagon. How do you have an intervention early enough in the course where they can still have a great experience and give you a high rating by the end?
Awesome. Well, Wes, this has been so valuable, so tremendous. 2 last quick questions. Number 1, if folks were to take one core idea away about cohort-based courses, what would you like that overarching key idea to be?
Ooh, all right. I think the key idea would be don't compare your first cohort with someone's 50th cohort. A lot of listeners here might have seen or experienced someone else's cohort-based course. You might be hearing hints that other people are launching this. You might have attended some courses. And it's really easy to feel overwhelmed and then paralyzed with perfectionism, thinking my course has to be perfect from the beginning. It doesn't. I recommend that you launch an initial smaller cohort, test it, see how it goes, learn from it. So don't put the pressure of it needing to be perfect on your cohort 1. You'll eventually get there.
Great tip. And then how do people get connected and stay connected to Maven? Subscribe, check out the new developments, give us the whole Maven entree. Where can we go? What can we download? Can we get a demo? What's going on with all of that?
Maven.com, our website, would be the best place for that. I mentioned the free course that we have on how to build a cohort-based course. There's an application on our website. We're taking applications for the next couple of weeks. We're really looking for speakers, consultants, creators, subject matter experts who are ready to monetize their knowledge, take it to the next level, who are committed to having great content and creating a great experience, high quality experience for your students. So if that's something that's interesting for you, apply online on our site, and then we'll get back to you.
Maven.com. That's where to go. And I'm imagining that if they happen to listen to this episode after that, you do these a few times throughout the year, and they should continually check for new cohorts to get them on the love train and get them into the cohort-based course movement.
Love it. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Wes Kao, thanks for being with us. You were tremendously helpful. Loved the interview. Awesome. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.